Hello and welcome to World News on the Papyrus Global TV. My name is Christiana Babayo. Before we begin, here are the headlines. Ecowas rejects Guinea-Bissau military transition plan, warns of sanctions. Car presidential campaign launches amid tension and promises of peace. Mali conflict survivors report rampant sexual violence and executions, blame Russia's Africa course. Fear and uncertainty grip Uvira after M23 seizes strategic city in eastern DRC. Haitians struggle to rebuild lives after Hurricane Melissa. Tunisian opposition leader Abir Morsi handed 12-year prison term. UN condemns deadly drone strike on peacekeepers in Sudan's Kordofan. Now the news in details. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has rejected the military junta's proposed transitional plan in Guinea-Bissau, warning that failure to comply with democratic norms may lead to targeted sanctions. The regional bloc expressed concern over the appointment of the National Transitional Council by the military leadership, stating that the process undermines constitutional governance and the will of the people. ECOWAS officials emphasized that a credible and inclusive transition requires civilian oversight and consultation with political stakeholders to restore constitutional order. The bloc also reiterated its commitment to engage diplomatically with the junta while maintaining readiness to impose economic and political measures should the military authorities fail to adhere to democratic principles. The political upheaval follows the overthrow of President Umaru Sissoco Embalo, triggering regional alarm over potential instability. ECOWAS has previously deployed mediation teams in similar crises in West Africa and continues call for the immediate return of to civilian-led governance to prevent further economic and social disruptions. Campaigning has formally begun in the Central African Republic (CAR) ahead of the presidential election scheduled for 28 December 2025. Incumbent President Faustin Archange Touadera launched the re-election bid on 13 December 2025 before a large crowd at the Bangui's Omnisports Stadium, seeking a second term in office. Supporters of Touadera, who leads the United Hearts Movement (MCU), turned out in significant numbers as the president presented his campaign as a continuation of stability and peace achievements, reflecting lingering concerns over security and governance in CAR. The mobilization was highlighted by members of the ruling party who described the turnout as a strong show of confidence in the president's leadership. Opposition figures have also been active ahead of the official launch, outlining alternative platforms focused on socio-economic reforms and national reconciliation. With elections just weeks away, the campaign atmosphere remains tense but pivotal as CAR continues to work toward lasting peace after years of conflict and political instability. Refugees fleeing violence in northern Mali have recounted harrowing accounts of sexual violence, killings, and other abuses they attributed to fighters from Russia's African Corps, a military unit operating in the conflict zone. The testimonies were gathered by the Associated Press in and around camps in Mauritania's Hod El Chargui region, where more than 3,300 people have crossed into safety in recent weeks following intensifying fighting. According to refugees interviewed, a range of serious violations has occurred, including rapes, among them that of a 14-year-old girl who arrived at a makeshift clinic in severe shock with injuries linked to sexual violence, and reports of executed family members. Witnesses also described villages burned and bodies discovered with severe injuries, such as missing organs. Although the United Nations has documented abuses by all parties in Mali's long-running conflict, accusations against Russia's Africa Corps fighters represent a new and disturbing dimension given the group's origin as a replacement for the notorious Wagner mercenary force previously engaged in the Sahel. Legal experts say that the presence of Africa Corps under Russian military oversight could implicate Russian authorities in responsibility for the actions of its personnel under international law. Refugees and aid workers say the true scale of sexual violence is likely much higher than reported, as fear of reprisals, limited access to medical care, and rising stigma and social stigma around assault suppress reporting. Humanitarian agencies note that remote and inaccessible areas make the independent verification extremely difficult. Civilians in Uvira, a key city in the South Kivu province of the Democratic Republic of Congo (DRC), are living under fear and uncertainty after the M23 rebel group intensified its offensive and captured the urban center despite recent peace efforts. The city fall represents a significant setback in the region, disrupting daily life and contributing to a deepening humanitarian crisis. The Rwanda-backed M23 group announced it had taken control of Uvira after clashes earlier in December, even though a recent US-mediated peace agreement between the governments and the DRC and Rwanda did not include the rebels. Reports from the ground describe deserted streets, closed banks, and armed fighters patrolling key intersections with normal economic life effectively halted. The capture of Uvira follows a rapid offensive that has already seen the fall of other strategic locations in eastern Congo, exacerbating one of the continent's most severe conflicts. Official estimates indicate more than 400 civilians have been killed and upwards of 200,000 people displaced since the recent escalation of hostilities, many fleeing towards neighboring countries. Humanitarian concerns have surged as the fighting has displaced communities and interrupted basic services, including healthcare and schooling. Aid operations face increasing obstacles, and there are rising fears of disease outbreaks and food insecurity amid chaotic conditions. We will now go on a short break, and when we come back, the news will continue. Stay tuned.
The Papyrus Global, we don't just cover events, we create cinematic experiences. From red carpets to birthdays, gala dinners, and your fairy tale weddings, we bring your moments to life with high-tech precision. Our gadgets are smarter, our lenses sharper, and our team simply world-class. Trust the Papyrus Global to tell your story in the boldest, brightest way possible.
Welcome back, and now the news will continue. Communities in Haiti, particularly in the southern coastal town of Petit Goave, are working to recover after Hurricane Melissa, one of the most powerful storms to hit the region, devastated large swaths of the country into October 2025. Residents are contending with destroyed homes, lost livelihoods, and widespread food insecurity as they try to restore normal life in the storm's aftermath. The Category 5 hurricane killed at least 43 people in Haiti and left vast areas buried under mud and debris, with agricultural communities once sustained by crops such as plantain, corn, and beans, especially hard hit. Many families have lost their incomes and means of subsistence, compounding pre-existing humanitarian challenges. International aid efforts are underway. The World Food Programme (WFP) has distributed cash assistance vouchers to the most vulnerable, enabling them to buy food locally. Officials say this approach not only helps households meet urgent needs, but also supports local markets and the wider community economy. However, Haiti's broader crisis, including ongoing gang violence and displacement affecting nearly 1.5 million people, continues to strain recovery, making reconstruction efforts slow and perilous. Humanitarian agencies warn that millions of Haitians remain at risk of food insecurity and require sustained international support to rebuild. A court in Tunisia has sentenced opposition leader Abir Morsi to 12 years in prison in a high-profile case that rights groups and critics say reflects a broader crackdown on dissent under President Kais Saied. Morsi leads the Free Constitutional Party, one of the country's main opposition forces that has been in custody since her arrest in 2023 outside the presidential palace. The latest sentence stems from charges related to alleged assault and conduct deemed intended to cause disorder, accusations Morsi and her supporters reject as politically motivated. It represents one of several legal actions taken against opposition figures and civil society actors in recent years, which critics argue are part of a pattern of repression following Said's consolidation of power. Morsi's legal troubles have been protracted with various previous convictions under Decree Law 54, a broadly worded cybercrime statute, resulting in prior sentences that were reduced on appeal. The December ruling adds a significantly longer term, further weakening Tunisia's political opposition. Her imprisonment occurs alongside wider judicial actions against critics, including lengthy sentences of the opposition figures, lawyers, and civil society members, raising concerns among international observers about the independence of Tunisia's judiciary and respect for political freedoms. The United Nations has strongly condemned a drone attack that killed 6 Bangladesh peacekeepers and wounded 8 others at its logistics base in Kadugli, South Kordofan, Sudan. The strike, which occurred on 13 December 2025, targeted the United Nations Interim Security Force for Abyei, a mission deployed to maintain stability in the contested Abyei region between Sudan and South Sudan. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres described the drone attack as horrific and unjustifiable, warning that aggressions against peacekeepers could amount to war crimes under international law. He extended condolences to the families of the fallen and urged all parties involved in the conflict to agree on an immediate ceasefire and return to a comprehensive Sudanese-owned political process to end the hostilities. The Bangladesh government also condemned the assault, mourning the deaths of its personnel and confirming that authorities are working closely with the UN to secure medical care for the injured and repatriate the deceased. And that's all we have on World News on the Papyrus Global TV. I am Christiana Babayu. Thanks for joining us.